I'm Sierra Whitman, 34 years old, the family's experiment. Not the prodigy, not the pride, just the one they quietly hoped would fade. The message blinked on my phone at 6:12 a.m., buried under 3 calendar alerts and a missed update request from my dev team. Don't forget Brandon's engagement dinner next month. Wear something polished. Ava's parents are accomplished. That last line? It wasn't a reminder. It was a warning. Polished, accomplished, presentable. They never raised their voices, my parents, just their expectations. I stared out the window of my one-bedroom apartment. The same space where I coded NovaPath into existence. A company I built alone, in silence. While they toasted Brandon's med school milestones, I debugged my own legacy. They called me a freelancer, a phase, a footnote, until the acquisition contract arrived, with my name signed under the company they were trying to buy. And the woman Brandon was marrying? She signed it too. Not knowing who she'd just bought out. If you've ever been underestimated, if your success bloomed in silence, stay with me. Because what happened next? Tore the mask off an entire family. The sun had barely risen over the Chicago River, but my mind had already completed 3 circuits through the same thought loop. The message from my mother blinked at the top of my phone. Don't forget Brandon's engagement dinner next month. Wear something polished. Ava's parents are accomplished. That last line, like a dagger disguised as etiquette. They always were subtle about their disappointment. Raised voices weren't their style. Expectations were. I stared out at the glass-splintered water below my apartment, a tiny one-bedroom space I paid for with my own money, not theirs. Warm, neat, functional. A low hum came from my espresso machine. I'd built NovaPath in this room. My laptop perched on the same walnut desk where a dying succulent now leaned sideways. I'd coded through Christmases alone, built networks in between holidays I was quietly left out of. Not because I wasn't invited, but because I knew what would greet me. The same sideways glances, the quiet, still freelancing. From family friends, the kind my parents paraded to show off Brandon. He was the Whitman star. I never envied him. I envied their pride. He had always been groomed for greatness. Ivy League med school. TEDx, youth ambassador. When he got accepted into Harvard, they had a custom cake delivered to the house. When I won the statewide tech award in high school, my mother barely glanced at the certificate. Her focus was on the phone call confirming Brandon's pre-med scholarship. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that day, staring at the open window, wind grazing my skin like consolation. I should have learned then. Some victories were meant to stay private. The sharp ping of an incoming email brought me back. I leaned over, clicked open the subject line. Confirmation, acquisition terms, Helix Care / NovaPath. My chest stilled. There it was. The last signature in place. A contract born from 4 years of silent, grinding work. I scrolled down past the NDA section until I reached the sender line. Ava Lynn. Of course. Ava had been the head of strategic partnerships at Helix Care for over 2 years, a rising star with the poise and polish my mother would eat up. I remembered her from an old family brunch, sitting at Brandon's side, nodding as my father rattled off research stats. She was everything I wasn't. Concise, immaculately dressed, and clearly deemed accomplished enough to marry into the Whitmans. I clicked into the attached pitch deck. The file name, NovaPath, Transfers Whitman. My heart slowed. I hadn't used my full name on any public-facing document since I was 23. On paper to the world, I was S. Whitman, co-founder, then solo owner, of a tech consultancy that slowly turned into an AI-powered diagnostic platform. The anonymity wasn't out of fear. It was strategy. The moment they knew it was me, I would become the freelancer again, no matter how successful. I scrolled down. Near the acquisition clause, there it was. Ownership shall transition fully from S. Whitman to Helix Care Holdings, LLC. Ava had seen it. She had signed it. She hadn't made the connection. I let out a short breath. The photo. The only photo I'd ever taken for NovaPath's investor packet. The one with my back turned, walking along the edge of a data center. No face, no name, just shadow and motion. I stood, walked to my calendar pinned by the fridge. A bright red circle glared from May 18th. Brandon and Ava, Vera, 7 p.m. I didn't need a reminder. Brandon's engagement dinner, hosted by our parents, at Vera downtown. May 18th, 7 p.m. I saved the date. This time, not for them. For me. My mother always said, control the narrative before it controls you. That's why she never let me speak too long. Vera's rooftop shimmered in gold and glass. The skyline flickered behind soft white drapes, swaying gently in the spring breeze. It was a carefully curated illusion, one of warmth, elegance, success, the kind my parents worshipped. I stepped out of the elevator alone, black dress grazing the tops of my heels. No necklace, no statement earrings, just clarity. Claudia spotted me before I could even pretend to enjoy the view. "Sierra," she said, air kissing both cheeks like I was an acquaintance she tolerated. "You wore black again?" I smiled. "It's classic." Her lips pursed. "It makes you look like you're mourning your potential." The jab landed with precision, casual, practiced. A part of me wanted to laugh. She'd been delivering variations of that line since college. I used to internalize them. Tonight, I wore them like armor. Gerald joined with a glass of scotch, offering a nod instead of words. He'd never known what to say to me when it wasn't about med school or test scores. I took a slow breath and walked toward the center table where Brandon was holding court. "Sis," he said, pulling me into a quick hug. "Glad you made it." No follow-up. No, "How's work?" or "What have you been up to?" Just a placeholder greeting to fulfill family protocol. He turned to Ava, hand brushing hers. "This is Sierra, my sister." Ava's handshake was firm, polite. "Finally," she said. "Brandon's told me you work in tech?" "I run a company," I said, my voice even. Her eyes flickered, calculating. "Oh? Which one?" Before I could answer, my mother interrupted. "Ava, darling, your parents just arrived. I'll bring Sierra over in a moment." She turned to me, lowering her voice. "Please don't mention any side projects tonight. This dinner's about Brandon." Side projects. It took effort not to smile. We moved through the terrace, a blur of smiles and empty compliments. Aunts and uncles in expensive suits. Family friends with firm handshakes. One of them, a Dr. Kaplan, leaned in with faux concern. "Still freelancing?" he asked. "You know Apple's always hiring." "I run a tech company," I said calmly. "We were just acquired last week." He blinked. "Oh, congratulations." Before he could form a follow-up, I turned away. Across the room, I caught Ava watching me. Her expression had shifted, the usual charm replaced by a furrow in her brow, just enough to register. She stood beside Brandon, smiling as someone spoke to her, but her attention had split. She was doing the math. Later, in the bathroom, I stepped out of a stall to find her by the sink, phone in hand. She didn't look up as I passed, but I caught the screen in the mirror. Familiar slide format, black background, sharp font. NovaPath's pitch deck. I didn't pause. Behind me, she froze. Her fingers scrolled downward. Section 8. Ownership terms. Then the clause. Founder signature, S. Whitman. She looked up from the screen, lips parted. "No way," she whispered. "It's her." I didn't plan the reveal, but I wasn't going to stop it either. The hum of conversation dipped as servers glided between tables, placing white plates adorned with seared duck and microgreens. The sun had sunk low enough to make the Chicago skyline blush behind the glass walls. Gold light melted over wine glasses and polished silverware. And Gerald Whitman cleared his throat. He stood, napkin folded perfectly beside his untouched appetizer, fingers tapping against his glass to call the room to order. "If I may," he began, voice smooth, deliberate. A moment to honor not just the future of medicine, but the future of our family. He placed a hand on Brandon's shoulder, a rehearsed gesture, fatherly and proud. Brandon, your work in neurological research speaks for itself. Ava, you are a light, not just beside him, but in your own right. This engagement reminds us what excellence looks like when two remarkable people come together. Polite claps, a few scattered cheers. Glasses rose. I didn't move. My father's eyes didn't even flicker in my direction. Neither did Brandon's. Ava, however, hadn't looked away from me since she returned from the restroom. She set her wine down, lips slightly parted. Something trembled just behind her polished exterior. Confusion, maybe, or disbelief. Her voice cut across the moment like the snap of a violin string. "Excuse me," she said, standing. "Just to clarify, Brandon, is Sierra your sister?" The room hushed mid-toast. Brandon blinked, startled by the shift. "Yeah, why?" Ava turned to me, eyes narrowing like she was trying to resolve an equation she no longer trusted. "You're the CEO of NovaPath?" The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was surgical, precise, measured. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses froze mid-clink. Gerald's hand stayed lifted, but the toast died on his tongue. Claudia gripped the edge of her clutch like it was slipping from her grasp. Brandon's brow creased. "Wait, what?" I looked directly at Ava. "I am." Then, to Brandon, calm, clear. "And you've been trying to buy my company for 2 months. He laughed, short and sharp, thinking it was a joke, until he didn't. His expression shifted, tracing every past conversation for signs he'd missed. The color drained from Gerald's face. Claudia blinked rapidly, as if rewinding the last minute in her head, praying it would change. Ava's eyes didn't leave mine. She didn't sit down. This changes everything. They only wanted to hear once it sounded like success, but I'd long since stopped offering sound bites. The Waldron was quiet that morning. Linen-draped tables half filled with polished diners speaking in careful tones over espresso and smoked salmon. It had the kind of ambiance that stifled emotion. Maybe that was why Claudia picked it. She arrived in a pastel suit and pearls that didn't quite hide the tightness in her jaw. Gerald followed, slower than usual, scanning the room like he didn't expect to find me already there. I had ordered a single cappuccino and ignored the waiter's second offer of a menu. Claudia sat first, her napkin unfolded with precision, movements rehearsed. "We're proud. Truly." I didn't respond. Just let the silence steep like oversteeped tea. Gerald cleared his throat. "You kept this hidden. For years. Why?" I held his gaze, not sharp, not soft, just steady. "Because when I used to try," I said, "you'd ask if I'd considered front desk jobs, or whether coding was just another phase." Gerald's mouth parted slightly, but no sound came. Claudia's hand froze around her fork. "You always said you wanted us to find our own path," I continued. "But it had to be the kind of path you'd already walked, or could brag about at a dinner party." "We didn't know," Claudia said. "We didn't realize it had gotten that far. You were always so quiet." "Quiet is what happens," I said, "when you learn early that speaking won't change anything." A waiter approached with water. No one touched their glasses. The sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains behind me, softening the harshness of Claudia's blush-toned suit. But nothing softened her confusion. The kind that comes not from ignorance, but from the sudden collapse of an illusion. Gerald looked down at the tablecloth. Then, unexpectedly, he looked up, directly at me, not scanning for flaws, not searching for rebuttal, just looking, like he saw something he'd missed for 34 years. Claudia tried again, voice faltering at the edges. "We'd like to try again." I took a breath, held it. My voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "You don't get to try again," I said, "until you unlearn what made you blind." When Brandon knocked on my door, I thought it was a last-minute PR rescue. It wasn't. It was human. The city lights shimmered through the glass door behind me, casting long golden lines across the hardwood floor. A slow jazz playlist drifted from the speaker in the corner, quiet enough to let the stillness breathe. I hadn't expected anyone. But then came the knock. Brandon stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding a bottle of red and a white paper bag smudged slightly with chocolate. He wasn't dressed for an apology, just jeans, a hoodie, and an expression I'd never seen on his face. Not pity, not pride, just presence. "I baked," he said, lifting the bag like an offering. "It flopped. This is plan B." He raised the box of cookies inside. I stepped aside and let him in. We ended up sitting on the floor, backs against the couch, sharing the cookies straight from the box. No plates, no pretense. Just silence, broken occasionally by the clink of his wineglass against mine. After a long minute, he exhaled, voice barely above the music. "I thought you were flailing," he said. "I never asked. I just assumed." I glanced at him, not unkindly. "You didn't need to, you assumed." He nodded, fingers tapping the stem of his glass. "I bought into their definition of you. You were always the one with potential, not the one who delivered." "And you were always the one with results," I said. "You didn't need to prove anything. I had to prove everything, even when no one was watching." Brandon looked down at the wine in his glass, then over at the framed photo on my shelf, a shot of the Chicago River at dawn. He smiled faintly. "I guess I thought silence meant struggle," he said. "I didn't realize silence could be strategy." "It had to be," I said. "You can't win a game when the rules weren't written for you." He lifted his glass. "To the family underdog." I clinked mine gently against his. "To the ones they forgot, until we didn't need remembering." He reached into the pocket of his hoodie, pulling out a folded piece of paper. I recognized the Helix Care letterhead immediately. "Ava left this," he said, handing it to me. "New offer. Renegotiated terms. CEO title remains," she insisted. My fingers paused on the edge of the note. It wasn't about business anymore. Not really. It was about recognition. Not from them, but from someone who had every reason to turn away. And chose not to. Brandon didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was sitting beside my brother. I felt like he was sitting beside me. Recognition fades. Conviction stays. The morning sun spilled over the edge of the windows, brushing golden light across the new NovaPath office. Glass panels reflected the river below, now dappled with early summer shimmer. Plants lined the edge of the open floor, and soft hums of startup energy filled the space. Half ambition, half caffeine. I stood near the front, addressing a small group of high school STEM students from Southside Initiative. They looked at me with bright, unfiltered expectation, the kind that didn't yet know what it meant to be dismissed, or if they did, hadn't accepted it as permanent. "You don't need permission to matter," I told them. "But you'll be asked for it anyway, again and again. Give yourself the answer they never will." A few of them nodded, scribbling into notebooks. One girl in a cobalt hoodie met my eyes and didn't look away. That was enough. After they left, Nina leaned against the doorframe of our new conference room, arms folded, grinning. "You just keep getting more poetic." "Occupational hazard," I said, sorting through some onboarding papers. "You're still not framing that Forbes feature, huh?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "You want it above the coffee machine?" She laughed, tossing me a small envelope. "Mail came for you. From someone classy. Handwritten return address." I flipped it open. Claudia's handwriting, curved and deliberate. "I read your Forbes interview. I didn't understand every term, but I'm learning." Mom. No signatures, no emojis. Just that line. I set the note down slowly next to my laptop. Not because it undid anything, but because it acknowledged something. an inch where there once wasn't room to breathe. Later, while packing up, I heard footsteps behind me. Ava stood at the edge of the room, blazer off, hair loose, no makeup, just presence. She didn't say hello. When I realized it was you, she said, I didn't want to win. I wanted to build with you. I looked at her, not to read her, just to register her fully. Then let's build, I said. She nodded once, then left. At home that night, I lit a single lamp, pulled off my blazer, and sat on the edge of my bed. My phone buzzed. It was from Brandon. A photo. A white card with new wedding details, reset for early fall. We changed the date. You matter. I smiled. No reply. Some things didn't need to be mirrored back. They needed to be absorbed. In the mirror across the room, I caught my reflection. Hair tied back, sleeves rolled, the skyline behind me. Not a prodigy, not a mistake. Just Sierra Whitman, the one who stayed, the one who built. My laptop pinged. A new email. Subject: Fortune 40 under 40 nomination, submitted anonymously. I closed the screen, leaned back, and let it be. They had tried to write her off as a footnote, but she built the headline. In a world where silence is often mistaken for weakness, Sierra proved that quiet resilience can shake foundations. Justice, though delayed, arrived not with vengeance, but with clarity, poise, and the undeniable weight of truth. Because no dynasty of deception survives when the forgotten begin to remember their worth.